Welcome to this explainer. Okay, if you're an IT pro, you already know the familiar sting of Patch Tuesday. Your inbox lights up, the deployment emails go out, and the mandate is always the same: confirm the build number matches. But if you've been in the trenches long enough, you know that this simple instruction is exactly where most fleet-scale validation completely falls apart. Today, we're putting an end to those deployment headaches. We're going to break down the reality of the August 2026 Patch Tuesday, look at the actual data driving compliance, and give you the tools to manage your updates like a total pro.
We've all been there, right? You push out the update, you check WinVer on the laptop sitting right next to you, the build number is perfectly correct, but the new features just aren't there. It's literally the most frustrating thing. You start wondering if the install completely failed or if Intune is just acting up again. Well, take a breath. It turns out that missing feature isn't a bug at all. It's actually expected behavior.
So here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the build number myth, then updates versus features. After that, finding the real truth. Fourth, the 4-phase QA matrix. And finally, skill in your compliance.
All right, part 1, the build number myth. Why checking WinVer on a single laptop completely fails at scale?
You see, checking WinVer on one machine, it's just a terrible way to manage an entire fleet. Take August 2026. We've got two main updates. There's KB 5121003 for Windows 11 versions 25H2 and 24H2, bringing those expected builds to 26200.9168 and 26100.9168. And then we have KB 5120240 for the 23H2 branch, which lands at 22631.7517. But here's the wild part. A device can genuinely have these exact build numbers installed, fully rebooted, confirmed, and still completely lack the new August features, like the new File Explorer UI or those Windows search tweaks. If you're doing this by hand, one device at a time, you're literally only getting half the story.
Which brings us to Section 2, updates versus features. Two totally separate mechanisms at play.
Think of this like two separate trains arriving at entirely different times. Train number 1, that's your build number. This only updates after the cumulative package physically applies and the device actually reboots. So if a laptop has been sitting at restart required for 2 days, it isn't lying to you about being patched. It just hasn't boarded that final train yet. Now train number 2, that's the features. Most of these new user experience changes are delivered through something called Controlled Feature Rollout, or CFR. The code actually ships dormant inside the KB for every single device, then Microsoft remotely toggles those features on in gradual stages over the next few weeks. So yeah, you can have two laptops on the exact same build, and one has the flashy new features, while the other doesn't.
The absolute most crucial takeaway here is this: do not log a missing feature as a failure. Seriously, because of controlled feature rollout, a feature that simply hasn't been flighted to your device yet looks completely, 100% identical to a feature that is fundamentally broken. You should really only escalate a missing feature if it's still missing weeks later across a good chunk of your fleet. Don't chase ghosts.
Moving on to Section 3, finding the real truth. Digging into registry keys and event IDs. Since we know we can't trust the Windows Update settings page or just eyeballing features, we have to look under the hood. First up, the CBS/reboot pending key. This is from the low-level component-based servicing engine. If this key is there, a low-level file swap is just waiting on a restart. The second one, auto update/reboot required, is a totally independent flag from the Windows Update client itself. For both of these, a healthy state means the key simply does not exist. We've also got defer quality updates period and days, which basically proves your Intune deferral policy actually landed on the physical disk, instead of just floating around in the cloud. And then there's the tricky one, pending file rename operations.
So, pending file rename operations is this generic Windows queue for any locked file that needs replacing on reboot. And here is a massive gotcha. This key might have an entry for something totally unrelated to your patch. Think like an IME language pack cache operation. If you query this key alone, you might force an entirely unnecessary reboot on a user. Always check CBS, Windows Update, and this key together. Treat CBS and Windows Update as your authoritative pair.
Beyond the registry, your event IDs tell the real timeline. Event 19, that means install successful. And a single Event 31 scan failure, that's usually just transient network noise, nothing to panic over. But you really need to pay close attention to Event 4386 in the servicing channel. This one warns you that CBS requires a reboot. And the major danger here is that Event 4386 fires exactly once. It is not going to remind you. If a device logs Event 19 for a successful install, but never logs the follow-up CBS completion without a 4386, that device absolutely needs a reboot, no matter how many days it's just been sitting there.
All right, Section 4, the 4-phase QA matrix. Stop using a flat checklist.
So how do we actually test the update safely? Simple. We ditch the flat checklist. A flat checklist mixes critical business-stopping bugs with, minor UI changes. Instead, try splitting your testing into 4 distinct phases based on depth. Phase 1 is your standard smoke test. We're talking booting, BitLocker, network, core apps. This requires full depth on every device every single month. Phase 2 covers the new feature spot checks. These are light, eyeball-only tests. Phase 3 is carry-forward regression, basically checking that last month's security hardenings didn't secretly break today. And Phase 4 is a light pass for legacy branches like 23H2. The absolute golden rule here, a Phase 1 smoke test must pass completely before you even bother looking at Phase 2.
Speaking of Phase 2, let's take a look at the actual August 2026 spot checks. We've got File Explorer finally showing units in megabytes and gigabytes instead of just kilobytes. Windows Search has a cool new typo tolerance, so spelling notepad without the E still finds notepad. We have accent colors on widget badges and new touchpad scrolling speeds, but the real standout here is Windows Hello Enhanced Sign-In Security. It now supports external plug-in USB fingerprint readers. If your fleet uses desktops without built-in biometrics, this is a genuine, hardware-isolated capability upgrade that is absolutely worth piloting this month.
And that brings us to Section 5, scaling your compliance, tailoring the reality for your IT roles.
It's one thing to understand CFRs and registry keys yourself. It's a whole other ballgame to tailor this reality for your team. Let's start with the QA tester. They don't just need a single laptop. They need a whole device matrix spanning branches like 23H2 and 25H2, and join types like EntraID versus hybrid. They need exact repro steps. Don't just tell them to test search. Tell them to type Notepad and expect Notepad. And most importantly, they need to provide screenshots, precise build numbers, and timestamps for any failures. It didn't work is just not an actionable ticket without the exact build number it failed on. Now, the IT manager operates at a completely different altitude. They need a risk profile based on actual pilot ring evidence. Remember, when Microsoft reports no known issues, that just means no widely reported issues. It doesn't guarantee a clean bill of health for your specific, bespoke software stack. The manager also needs a pre-decided rollback path, like pausing the Intune ring, before deployment ever begins. And they desperately need an end-user communication plan. Because honestly, a user complaining about a forced reboot in the middle of their workday, that's a communication failure, not a technical one.
Finally, the change approver. A change board should never have to guess what's happening based on a verbal, hey, it's fine. They need explicit KB numbers. They need justification pulled directly from the MSRC Security Update Guide for actual CVE severities, not just a list of UI updates. And they need the deployment window strictly aligned to active hours. If a change forces a reboot mid-shift without a clear, pressing reason, the board should reject it on that basis alone, regardless of how good the patch is technically.
So, to get those day 7, 14, and 30 compliance metrics safely and automatically, you can deploy the scripts provided in the source material as an Intune proactive remediation. You just drop the Get-Compliance PowerShell script as your detection and the Remediate Report script as your remediation. Just make sure you set Run Using Logged-On Credentials to No, since it really needs to read machine-level registry and event logs. The beautiful part here, this remediation script is strictly report-only. It never forces an update, it simply logs the real registry-based compliance finding for your management tooling to act on.
Which leaves us with one final, absolutely critical question for you to chew on today. After seeing how build numbers completely decouple from features and realizing just how complex the registry flags for pending reboots actually are you relying on automated, evidence-based, fleet-wide tooling? Or are you still just eyeballing WinVer on a single laptop and hoping for the best? It's time to let the data do the driving. Thanks for joining this explainer, and happy patching.